Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us on our June 2016 Tech Talk. The topic for today is why should I upgrade my phone system? My name is Darren Walters. I'm the sales engineer here with NextTech, and with me today is Shannon Rothschild, one of our sales executives out in the field.
Good morning, everybody.
One thing as we go through the presentation, you'll notice the chat box. Go ahead and if you've got any questions, type them in. We'll try and get them all answered towards the end, we'll save plenty of time to get those addressed. So with that, we'll get started. Again, the topic for today is why should I upgrade my phone system? This is something that historically, people just replace their systems because they need to, or they think it's old or it dies. But there are some other things that we need to definitely look at and address. So first things first, phone system life cycle. I just lost my slide advance.
There we go. Went too far forward. There you go. All right.
Okay, technology.
Love it.
Phone system life cycle. Basically, the industry says that the useful life cycle of your system is about 5 to 7 years. Obviously, we've got systems out in the field that last a lot longer. Most of our customers want them to last a lot longer than that. But that's what the industry says. Manufacturers will tell you, and we have vendors that we deal with that say, hey, our phone systems will last 15, 20 years. I think I just had that conversation with a vendor last week. So, what the vendors tell you and what the industry says is the actual life cycle is just a little bit different. Historically, lifespan was a little bit more of an issue with the hardware-based systems. And what I mean by that is current phone systems today, whether it's a premise-based or a cloud-based offering, voice over IP or whatever, basically are heavily software-driven. And Shannon, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about kind of the hardware piece versus software piece in terms of technology.
So you can look at it like as we advance in technology, software is becoming more and more prevalent versus hardware, right? And so you've heard people talk about soft phones. You've heard people talk about voice over IP and using the internet to connect. Hardware-based systems didn't use that type of technology. As we move forward, we're going to see more and more of that become prevalent, and I think it's going to become more and more cost-efficient moving forward as well. And so those are things to think about along the lines of with this topic.
Yeah, and back in the day, and I've been in the phone industry, for a little over 20 years, and historically systems, you'd hang them back on the wall and install all the phones, and the system was what it was. Whatever software was on it, whatever features were available to it were just there. If you wanted to do a hardware upgrade, you had to get the new control unit and slap it up on the wall and move forward. So the hardware versus software thing is definitely lengthening the lifespan of the equipment and the solutions because we can upgrade them with a software flash as opposed to replacing the box on the wall. 15 to 20 years ago, we really saw a cycle where manufacturers would introduce a new platform maybe every 3 to 5 years. So if you bought an old CommDial system, probably about 3 to 5 years later, they would come out with a new version of that same box. Currently today, with our major manufacturers on our premise-based side, manufacturers are releasing major software versions every 9 months, sometimes more often. So, we're getting upgrades at a pretty feverish pace compared to the way it used to be. Some of the legacy systems, you guys might recognize these phones. We've got the old Merlin phone on the left. We've got a Nortel phone. There's an old CommDial system up there and an old Panasonic phone. 3 of these system manufacturers that we're looking at right now aren't even in business anymore. And I know that we've got a heck of a lot of them out in the field. Shannon, as you visited customers, you've probably seen these on the desks, and customers just hang on to them.
That's right, because they can answer the phone, they can transfer a call, and they can hang up, right?
It's taking care of business.
There you
go. The graveyard. Few of the models that are out there, AT&T, Lucent, TIE, Nortel, 3Com, Trillium, Sprint Protege, and CommDial are all no more. And I know we've got every one of these probably out in the field in our territory right now. These products are no longer being manufactured. They're no longer being made. About 3 of the companies aren't even in business anymore. And so it becomes a real issue. Most of the manufacturers of these legacy systems were kind of born out of the 80s, probably just like Shannon was.
That's right, brother.
When divestiture happened and the phone company stopped owning everything up to the phone, that really kind of spurned some entrepreneurship, and there was a lot of phone system manufacturers. When I started my career, there was...
Was that in the 1940s?
It was late 40s.
Okay.
But when I started my career, I worked in Manhattan, Kansas, and I think we worked on at least 8 to 10 different brands of systems. And they were all new, being made new, and so there was a lot going on. There's still thousands of these systems in use today. I mean, they're literally out there everywhere, and like Shannon said, as long as they can make a call, take a call, put a call on hold, they're fine and happy.
But the key is, what happens if they can't, right?
That's right.
Systems are becoming older and older, and parts are becoming more and more difficult to find.
They're getting really tough on some of these systems. We had a customer with a control unit on one of these old systems go out last week, and we replaced it and got them back up and going with our last controller. So, we could probably scour the internet and find one. The problem is that at this point on all those legacy systems, the parts, cards, control units, power supplies, phones, they're just remanufactured and refurbished. There's nothing being made new. So everything that's out there on the secondary market is something that's been repaired, used, and the quality of those parts is just really not good. We've had some situations where we've ordered some refurbished, remanufactured phones for a customer with a 1-year warranty, and we kind of hope and pray, and we'll order 5 or 6 of them, and maybe one works out of the box. So those are some of the issues we have. Here are some of the things that you're missing. Shannon, can you give us a rundown on just some of the features that, we got all those customers out there that have these systems from the 80s and the early 90s. Maybe they know what they're missing, maybe they don't, but give us a rundown on some of the new features.
So we have a list here on the screen you can read through yourself. Talks about caller ID, talks about the ability to conference call, talks about the ability to have voicemail. These are all things that are standard on phone systems today. And you may ask yourself, well, how will these things benefit me? How will they not? Well, I want to draw your attention to those last two pieces in that first bullet that says desktop application, mobile applications. We're all on the move today. Well, most all of us, not everybody, but most all of us is using some type of desktop, whether it be a Mac or a PC, for our workplace. We now have the ability to integrate phone systems into those devices, which can dramatically improve your productivity. And so without the latest technology installed on your phone system, you're not going to have that improved technology, that improved productivity. And so, you get the ability to become more mobile with your phone system. You get the ability to take it with you wherever you go if you want to. You also have the ability to be able to message back and forth through those applications that you wouldn't necessarily have to pick up the phone and dial somebody if you wanted to get a message to somebody. So the things that are out there are standard, but yet they're always changing and improving your productivity.
And the mobility piece, and whether it's using a soft phone client on your PC or using a client on your mobile phone, those are really things that can increase productivity. Like Shannon said, a lot of them are kind of standard issue with systems today, even though they're maybe light years ahead of what some of our customers may have. I definitely like to be mobile, and it definitely increases my productivity throughout the day. We've actually have some installs in the field where a customer has a brand new phone system with no phones. I know it sounds kind of funny because everybody's used to having the phone on their desk, but it's right around the corner, and really those applications based on your type of business are definitely something to take into consideration. One of the problems in moving forward is most of the legacy systems, what we call these older systems, they can only typically handle analog line or POT service. And when we say POT service, it stands for plain old telephone service. Very technical term.
Yes.
So we're really kind of limited on doing some things because that's the way the systems were manufactured. One challenge that a lot of people don't think about is the fact that when you're talking about systems that were developed and installed in the 90s, early 2000s, You look at our technical staff. A lot of those technicians were just probably in grade school when those systems were out in the field. And so from an industry standpoint, you're running into an issue where, technical capabilities on repairing, upgrading, programming those systems is really dwindling down.
So you're telling me they're not training people how to fix phone systems that were manufactured 30 years ago?
They're not, unfortunately. So when you go through tech school, they're working on the latest and greatest, not, stuff back from the big hair days. So
big hair. We all love big hair.
So that's a real issue. Okay, one of the first things, and Shannon, I'll get your help on some of these. One of the first things that you're going to want to do when you're looking for a new phone system or making the decision if that's the way you want to go is your research and evaluation. And I guess before we start, Shannon, you're talking to customers all the time. What are some of their business drivers? What are some of the reasons other than, hey, it's just old and I need to get rid of it? What are they looking for?
So it depends on what their individual business needs are, but we sit down and we talk about things like, well, if I am out of the office and I need to be able to be reached, how do they reach me today? Are there things that we can do different that can improve that? If we have multiple locations, how can I communicate across my locations through our phone system by making it one footprint, so to speak, where you have one system that can go to all different locations? We talk about how many employees they have and the needs for individual employees, whether it be different departments or their different skill sets that their employees have and what they need to be able to accomplish with their phone system, with their voice system, with their communication. So there's a lot of different pieces and parts that go into place. We sit down, we lay it on the table, and we talk about what all those things are. Of course, obviously, cost is involved as well.
Absolutely.
But we look and try to come up with a solution that will meet what their specific needs are, and no businesses are exactly the same, and their needs maybe are all different as well.
I get a chance to get out and interact with customers in kind of the pre-sales format to, kind of evaluate and design systems. And, one of the questions we get a lot of times is, we obviously know that today's platforms are super powerful and very, very flexible. I mean, it's almost to the point where from a call standpoint, from a productivity standpoint, if the customer can dream it, we can pretty much do it. But it's educating the customers on some of those new features. I'll constantly be asked, you tell me what I need. Tell me what features are out there and how will they help me. And so I think that's where, having a valued partner is extremely important, to where, you can talk about the new features, the new functionality, and be able to understand, their business needs. And hopefully, systems have tens of thousands of features available to them, but if you can lock onto 2 or 3 that help that customer be more productive, it's well worth it.
Something else that's important, because all this is constantly changing and it's new and you have updates, is training. Introduction to the new technology. If you're going to roll out a new system, I want to make sure that my employees are trained on how to use it. And of course, we do that as well. And then ongoing training, because when you have changes or updates, things change, things look different, things may perform different. So ongoing training and support is important as well.
Yeah, back in the old days, as I like to call them, really the key to it as a technician was we wanted to make sure the receptionist knew how to work the phone. If we could make her happy, all the rest of the employees would fall in line. Today, it's a little bit difficult to keep in that same model, because we've got to teach the average users how to use their phone based on the functions that they need. We've obviously got to work with the receptionist and teach her to do her thing. A lot of times we'll have somebody on staff that will make maybe changes to their system, whether it's resetting a voicemail box or retrieving a password, building a new extension, changing names, that type of thing. So we've also got to do some administration training. So we try and cover all those bases, because a lot of the systems, have the ability where the users can make some of their own changes, and it's extremely important, and they seem to love it.
Yep.
Is there a qualified local vendor to support the solution? We see that in the industry and out in the field. We have customers that work with vendors that we like to affectionately call trunkers. And, we've seen a lot of them come and go. And, they'll kind of sell on the low end, and maybe they're here today, gone tomorrow. So really, being a partner, finding somebody that you can partner with that's going to be there for the long term, that's going to help you, today and tomorrow, is extremely important thing to look at. But, we've got customers that'll buy a system and somebody will drop it in and they'll be gone, and they're kind of left holding the bag. As Shannon said, cost and budget are a big concern, as in terms of how things are going on at the state level, and obviously K through 12 is having some issues. What on a scale of 1 to 10, the customers that you visit, where does cost play into that with most of your?
I don't like to focus on cost. I like to focus on value, but obviously cost is important, and so we try to discuss about the value versus the cost, right?
Right.
And so it ranks up there high, there's no doubt about it, but we deliver value, and we deliver the ability to improve productivity, cut frustration, make it easier to communicate, those sorts of things. And so try to look at it from that standpoint is what the value is you're getting versus what the cost is, exactly.
Sure. And again, we'll kind of re-echo, one of the questions is, internal and external resources available. If I have the ability to administer my own system to make changes, do I have the people to do that? Or is that something I need to have my vendor do? And also another big thing is the solution roadmap. I mean, I buy a new system and I put it in, that's all fine and well, but what is that vendor's plan for 5 and 10 years down the road? How is their product going to evolve and keep up with me, rather than I buy a box and 7 years I have to replace the box? So that's another important issue. So one of the things that we'll talk about, and I'll kind of hand this off to Shannon a little bit, is one type of offering that you may look at, and it's really gaining a lot of traction. We're seeing a lot of competitors. Everybody's trying to get into the game, is a cloud or cloud-based system, or what they call in the industry a hosted PBX or VoIP system.
Voice over IP, what exactly does voice over IP mean? And it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. This diagram here shows a general conception of what it looks like, in that basically you don't have a quote-unquote normal phone line or POTS line coming into your business or where your phone system would reside. Instead, it's typically an internet connection. And then there's different protocols for the delivery of that voice service through that internet connection, right? But you have an internet connection that comes back through your network, and then on your network you have IP-based telephones. What's an IP-based phone? It uses the same protocols that a computer would use to communicate across a network. So to get out the internet, we use IP protocols. Your phone would use IP protocols as well. You can also hook up or connect analog devices on an IP-based system as well if you wanted to. So a fax machine is a good example how that works. But how exactly is this different than a traditional phone system? The point is, we don't have it on this diagram, but everything that runs the whole system is not in your or on your premise or in your building. It's out here in the cloud. And the cloud could be any data center anywhere. And that's one key thing to think about if you're thinking about a cloud or a hosted PBX offering, is who's actually hosting my solution, right? Where is that equipment setting and who's taking care of it for me? Because all of your call functions, most all your call functions, your voicemail, your user information, all that information is stored in a data center somewhere outside of your premise. And then you have this connectivity to the network that is managed so that it can provide you good quality voice. That's another big thing to think about is my provider, if I'm going to go to a cloud solution, are they going to be able to provide me enough bandwidth that's adequate so I get what we call a toll quality call, so I don't hear any don't have any drop calls, don't hear any delay or have any jitter on my call. The point here is that with a cloud-based solution, you don't have the equipment except for the telephones it replaces. And it gives you the flexibility to easily add these people out here over the internet, whether it be a teleworker or somebody that works from home or those sorts of things. And so it makes it a lot more flexible to add and take away users and to have you a single footprint on a cloud phone. I think the next slide talks about some of those benefits.
Okay. And before we jump, we might talk about one thing that I think is probably the most important differentiator, and it's something that the conversation that we have to have every single day. And customers hear voice over IP, they hear, about the Skypes and the Vonage for Business and the free PBX, and just, pay me $20 a month and I'll give you a phone
Grasshopper,
and unlimited.
baby.
Oh yeah.
Grasshopper.
You really need to do your research and peel the onion to figure out why it is as cheap or inexpensive as it is. The biggest reasons is they're probably going to use your existing internet connection. They're going to throw those phones right on the top of your data network. And once we do that, you really have a tough time controlling quality. And it's any good network, any good data network or voice network is only as good as the sum of its parts. So one key differentiator between providers is finding out, how are you going to provide my service? What are you going to do to ensure quality? When we install any cloud-based system, we're providing a separate secure connection with a security device on the end to protect the customer from the outside world and to protect us as the hosted provider from anything going on in the customer's network. So delivery, Shannon mentioned, the storage and the security of the data and the call processing, but delivery is another huge element to consider.
So we have some features and benefits of the cloud showing up here on the screen here, and I think we've covered a lot of these in that. We didn't talk about the top one, I guess. PSTN, Public Switch Telephone Network, is what PSTN stands for. Again, that service is now part of your overall phone solution because you don't have a separate bill for dial tone and then a separate system that you own and maintain, right? It's all together into one. You have your dial tone, your DIDs that come with cloud phone offering typically, it's all rolled into one monthly bill. One of the key things about the cloud phone, typically when you think about cloud phone, is do you have the ability to upgrade? Do you have the ability to stay current? That's one of the key benefits, again, with going with cloud, is that you're not going to purchase a system, typically put it on your premise in your building, and have it sit there for 20 years and become outdated without significant costs to keep it updated. With cloud phone, you're always going to have up-to-date information, and it's provided by the provider, right? It's part of the cost that you have on that monthly billing. You get all that support, all the updates coming across from your provider.
And if I'm a customer and I don't have to worry about maintaining and upgrades, and I can just focus on my business, that's a huge selling factor.
Right. It is. Because people then can rest assured they're always going to have up-to-date information, up-to-date technology, secure, and it's being provided and managed by the provider. Anything else you want to add about cloud?
No, typically, as you guys are researching some of these things, and we've done specific webinars and tech talks in the past on specific technologies. So I know we've done SIP trunking, cloud phone, premise-based systems, mobility-specific things. So we wanted to try and stay a little bit out of the techie stuff and just really kind of help you get some pointers and some ideas on what path to take and some things to do as you guys are looking to maybe upgrade your systems out there. One of the key features and benefits that we didn't mention is with cloud-based service, there's typically no upfront cost. It's no capital expenditure. It's basically a monthly service that you pay monthly for. So we'll talk about kind of monthly versus capital in some later slides, but that's one of the things that you'll see with cloud phone.
So then we transition over to a premise-based system. What does premise-based mean? It means that the equipment that manages and drives your whole phone system sits inside of your building. So we have a simple picture here that shows, again, the dial tone coming in from a service network, service provider, and then that goes into your system, whatever that system may be. There's plenty of different vendors out there that can provide you an on-premise based system, and then you have your phones in-house. It's typically it's not an internet connection, whereas a cloud-based phone offering is typically some type of internet connection. This is just dial tone coming into your building, right? And here we have some benefits. So a in-house system typically gives you more features. It's a more robust system if you need those or need to apply those, right? So you have the ability to expand in-house and do some things that you may not be able to do with a cloud phone offering. You can deploy it, obviously, in any environment. A cloud-based system has some limitations as to where you can deploy it and how you can use it. Premise-based, you're in control of where you put it and how you use it, so you have a little bit more control there. You can own the equipment, as well as Nixtech does some things differently. We don't have to purchase it as well. We're not going to go into that today, but typically on a premise-based system, you can own those. You can own those systems as well, and then you can typically connect to that with a variety of different types of dial tone. And like Darren just mentioned, we've had talks about that before. But it just gives you some more flexibility in how you can set up and maintain your system. And you have ownership of it, right? And so then you are either in charge of it, you manage it yourself, or you have some type of service agreement in place where somebody else takes care of it for you.
And we get those clients and run across those opportunities to where they want to own it, they want to buy it, they have the capital, they want to maintain it, and that's fine. We're always going to have those clients out there, so it's definitely a good option. One thing that we want to hit on and spend a little bit of time on is when you're looking at evaluating a phone solution. We want you to not only think about what type of equipment am I going to get. Am I going to get hosted? Am I going to get VoIP? And as Shannon said earlier, VoIP means a lot of things. I liken it back to the days when we saw the TV commercials all the time where Sprint was pitching their PCS phone. Get Sprint PCS, and so they had associated that with kind of a specific type of technology when it really wasn't. It just stands for Personal Communication Service. And it was a broad-based term that every cell phone was a PCS device,
yes,
technically.
Correct.
But it's the way they spin it and the way they market it. But VoIP is the same way. I mean, am I getting a VoIP phone? Am I getting VoIP-based phone service? Is my system capable of doing VoIP? Is it on the network? Is it not on the network? So VoIP can mean a lot of things, just like PCS obviously did. So one of the key things is in evaluating your system needs is looking at services. We talked about POT service, which is plain old telephone service. It's just 2-wire analog dial tone, and you plug it in and away you go. Well, there's some definite advantages to SIP trunking technology, and some powerful features and benefits, and some cost savings to be had. SIP trunking is basically we're delivering voice services via an Ethernet type connection. I would liken SIP trunking similar to maybe a PRI type service, to where it's kind of flexible in terms of bandwidth and call paths and DIDs and those types of things. But with SIP trunking, we have kind of a deeper integration to the phone system. The system is communicating with our provider switch and setting up and tearing down calls. So we have a lot more integration than just plugging in a POTS line and going off hook and making a phone call. SIP is great for multi-site customers, so they can install SIP trunking at their 3 or 4 locations and utilize toll-free calling between their branches. So that's one thing that we see a lot of interest in. With SIP trunking, each user can have their own DID. So I can basically give you your own 7-digit number, and a lot of people want DIDs. Mm-hmm. They can use them for single number reach, for faxing, and they just have to worry about one number and call me directly. We can replace POTS or PRI service with SIP trunking, and there's some definite cost values. What we did here in this slide is we did a quick kind of average analysis and 2 different comparisons on SIP trunk pricing. The one on the left is basically SIP versus POTS. And so what we did is we took a customer that has 5 lines, hunting, caller ID, and on average they're paying about $255 a month. With SIP trunking, a comparable 5 call path SIP trunk with DIDs, hunting, caller ID, is about $172.95 a month. Now we're providing better service, more features, more functionality for less price, and even a small business with 5 phone lines can see a savings of almost $1,000 a year, which
significant.
Is huge, and you might be able to use some of those savings to offset equipment purchases or other things. For our PRI customers, we took a PRI example with full PRI, 23 channels, 100 DIDs, based on an average normal contract. So basically, PRIs are provider dependent based on cost, but we kind of took some cost averaging to get this number. About $2,100 a month for a PRI. In comparison, a 23 channel SIP trunk with 100 DIDs is $507 a month.
Wow.
So that's big time. That's about $1,500 a month, which is about almost 20 grand a year, and in recognizing savings. So we'll keep doing a better job as a company to let people know and make people become aware of our SIP trunking offering or any other competitor SIP trunking offering, because there's really some value to it.
So you're saying somebody could save 20 grand a year changing from a traditional PRI to a equivalent performing SIP trunk?
Absolutely, but they need to have a system that's capable of handling the SIP trunk.
Okay.
Not all legacy systems can handle SIP trunk. We can help accommodate for some of those. If you don't know if your system can handle SIP, we can definitely look at it and tell you. We also have the ability to deliver you a SIP trunk, and other providers do as well, and basically deliver it via SIP trunk to your premise and then turn it into POTS service, into PRI service, or just native SIP. So if you want to take advantage of SIP trunking, but you maybe don't have the equipment to do it, or it's not in the budget, we can maybe provide some solutions to allow you to be on that service.
Cool.
Existing systems, again, we can deliver SIP in SIP flavor, POTS, and PRI format. Some systems can handle SIP, others may just need a new upgrade or an interface card. The majority of the new systems just need licensing. So if we've got, SIP trunk with 5 call paths, I can get 5 SIP trunk licenses for your system, and away you go. But again, our staff is more than capable of evaluating your system free of charge to determine, what hardware needs you might have to take care of to get to that point. Just like with the hosted PBX providers, the free PBXs, beware of the third-party providers. These nationwide companies that are going to provide you SIP trunking just over your existing internet connection. We've had customers get on it and get right back off of it. So if they're a more localized, legit provider that is taking quality control measures, ask how they're delivering it, how are they securing it, that type of thing, because as much hacking as we have going on out in the world, we can definitely endure some toll fraud if your SIP trunk is not secure.
For sure.
Faxing solutions. I wanted to just take a little bit of time to talk about faxes. And
you mean people still use faxes today?
I've heard some people do.
Okay.
I had to use faxes until just a few months ago.
Yeah. I still get faxes, maybe one every 2 months.
So
people still use them.
My question is, some people love it. Some people have to fax their timesheets. They love getting the paper come through and see what kind of surprise they got. So my question is, do you love your fax machine like this guy, or do you hate it like these guys? I know that's a printer, but the idea is still the same.
You can't tell the difference.
But it's one thing that needs to be addressed when looking at a new system. So what am I going to do with my fax? We can definitely still keep your analog fax line, keep the old analog fax machine, but there's also some other options. So one of the options is you can get on a fax service, and these are typically a cloud-based service that charge you for a monthly fee. I looked at about maybe 8 to 10 of these companies. They typically charge anywhere from about $5 to $10 a month, anywhere from 3 to 12 cents a page, and sometimes they might cap you on number of pages per month. Basically, it does inbound and outbound PDF conversion and emails it to you. That's how it works.
So I get it in an email?
You'll get it in an email.
Okay.
If you're looking at a fax service, one thing to consider is making sure that they can port your number, so you can keep the same fax number. Looking to see if they possibly have any 800 number ties to it. So if I wanted to have a toll-free fax number, do they have that option? And definitely look at security. Are they encrypting it? Is it secure? If I'm a bank or a medical person, is it going to be compliant with what I'm doing?
Right.
The other option is going with just a local fax server. If we want to get rid of the machine, we don't want to pay monthly. I know Multitech makes a great box to where you can take out your fax machine, put in the little fax server, and it captures the inbound and does email. So it's inbound, outbound, PDF conversion. These are typically fairly inexpensive. Again, does standard PDF conversion to email, and you can just utilize your existing fax line. But it'll have a monthly charge. So buy the box one time, keep paying on your fax line, and away you go.
Right.
So let's get into a little bit of discussion on, making a capital purchase versus looking at a monthly option. So, Shannon, as a general rule, what are you seeing from your customers? How many are wanting to do a capital purchase? How many are opting for monthly? And what's helping them make that decision?
I think it's about 50-50.
Okay.
I from what I see and feel, we have a lot of customers who like to own and maintain their own equipment, right? And so that is obviously a capital purchase. We have some customers who who think about depreciation, right? And they want to be able to depreciate those assets. We have other customers who want to make sure that they stay current, and they don't want to spend a significant dollar amount up front and then 5 years later have that potentially not be relevant any longer, right? So when you look at monthly expenses, specifically on a hosted offering or a Cloudflare offering, you know you're always going to stay current. You're not going to get behind. Other folks like to be able to budget and say, I know that I'm going to spend this much a month, this much a year, and I'm always going to be taken care of, right? You can do that sort of on the capital purchase as well, because you can purchase support on those systems after you buy them. But it just depends on what individual customers' needs, what their wants are, what their likes are, what their desires are. I'd say it's about 50-50.
Okay. And one important thing to consider is, like I say, with any capital purchase, typically you're buying the hardware, you're paying for the installation labor, and then you may have an option for ongoing support or maintenance on that system. So, take that and look at it really as maybe a 5-year total cost of ownership. When you compare a capital purchase, everything included, and parlay that into a monthly, and kind of get a look and feel for what it's going to be, what your costs are going to be over a 60-month period. Obviously make sure that the support is built in. Typically with any hardware manufacturer on a premise type solution, you're buying the equipment, and you'll typically have roughly, maybe between a 1 and 2, 3 year manufacturer's warranty on the hardware. But that's not necessarily going to cover your service. So if lightning hits and it takes out your voicemail card, the card's covered, but the technician's time and travel is not. So make sure everything's included so you know what all your true costs are. We talked a little bit before about the cloud and the hosted PBX being a monthly service only. Again, look at that on a 60-month term and make sure everything is included. Some premise-based systems like that we've done in the past, even though it's a capital type purchase, we can also offer a monthly fee for that. Have you had any luck on some of those, taking a premise-based system and doing monthly with that?
Yeah, we do that. Do that some. You bet. So if there are folks out there that want to be, or that are concerned about security, right, and they don't want to have to rely upon their voicemail and their user information being in a data center somewhere, bring that in-house, put it in a premise-based system, but yet still make a monthly cost out of it. We can do that for sure.
And there's also, and we work with a few independent leasing companies to where, maybe I'm looking at a, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 capital investment, valuing the cost of money and those types of things. There are some leasing companies out there, and we can also hook you up with those too that are very attractive lease rates.
Sure.
To help finance that.
So in talking about costs, what are some of the hidden costs that you've seen over your career that people sometimes get hit with that they're not expecting when it comes to purchasing a phone system?
Well, not to get on any specific vendors, we've got a couple of competitors in the marketplace, competitive products that we deal with that hit you with post-installation maintenance fees, software fees. Cisco comes to mind, and their infamous SmartNet, to where a lot of people don't factor that into the 60-month or 5-year total cost of ownership, and they're getting hit with these update charges and maintenance fees. Really, getting with a partner that can look at the big picture, not only from the equipment side, the solution side, understanding enough about your business to be able to help you marry features with function,
need,
and that has support in the long term. We've seen a lot of customers out there that the competitors kind of roll through, and then the service falls off the radar. So you really want to look at somebody that's going to be there for the long term and that can support the product. So we'll check with Kristen and see what we have for questions. No questions at this time. So again, Shannon, thanks for being here, and thank you guys for attending our Tech Talk.